The story starts a few days after Japan. The version removes a giant monster, often called kaiju. At a school in Tokyo, a class meeting was happening when suddenly a plane of the special force in the sky. Everyone quickly ran to the window to see, and one of them worriedly asked if this was a bad point, afraid that kaiju lived. However, their friends say that if so, there will be alarms. At that moment, the alarm sounded, but when people checked the phone, there was no emergency notice. It turned out that it was just a malicious joke. Yukino left the party to find ex-boyfriend Arata. She saw him standing in the corridor talking over the phone with colleagues from the task force. She was disappointed to hear that he was about to go. The story revealed more about recent events. Tokyo was attacked by kaiju and was almost completely destroyed, until the monster was shown by a strong light and suddenly died. The entire area within a radius of 10 kilometers around kaiju has been evacuated and has been isolated. A satellite photo takes a light moment, but scientists cannot explain its origin. The government had to issue a statement to deny the use of nuclear weapons. Prime Minister Nisio Oyama appeared on national television, expressing pity for the loss of many young people and warned that the country was still in an emergency. When Yukino returned home to meet her husband, Amane, both work for the government, Japan, but before they were agents of the task force. The first thing Amane asked about the party was whether Arata appeared. Yukino answered that she only saw him because he had to leave early due to work. With an ironic tone, Amane said that the work was now dead. The task force currently operates at a base near Kaiju, in an area where its giant footprints are still printed on the riverbank. Amane's words were right when Arata came to the base and talked to her friend. She complained that the job now is just handling drones trying to invade the isolation area. In the Prime Minister's office, Amane saw the words "Die Ex Machina" on a notebook. Odin explained that this phrase means a divine and no intervention. The explanation, exactly what happened to kaiju. Still obsessed with mystery, Amane is concerned that the monster is not really dead. This concern also haunted the special forces of the task force when she received the information that kaiju's body temperature was increasing. However, experts think this is only part of the natural decomposition process. This is the content of the satisfaction between Odin and the ministers. No one knows what to do with kaiju. Each person sought to boil full of responsibility for others, and the hospital was enough to confirm that this issue was not in his responsibility. Angry at this chaos, Odin assigned the responsibility to the Minister of Defense. Haru reluctantly accepted, but required the budget from the Minister of Finance. Seeing that everything will last, Odin clung to the idea that it was necessary to declare security before being able to start handling kaiju. After the meeting, Odin had an unofficial conversation with Haru and admitted that he did not like the task force. He thinks they cannot defeat kaiju and now almost useless, should give them the task of handling the monster close. The next day, Sakisa informed Zara that he would be responsible for this campaign. The official visit began, and we learned that Yukino was the secretary of the Environment Minister, Rui. She was surprised to see her ex-boyfriend, who was the head of the team, and tried to greet him as solemnly as possible. However, Arata did not seem to pay attention to Yukino's efforts and answered in a way that made people understand they had known before. When traveling with the minister on the visit, Sakisa discreetly told Arata that Yukino would probably want to use kaiju to enhance his position. The group moved by helicopter, flying across the river, arriving at the giant kaiju. The scenery is extremely impressive but quite strange. One leg of kaiju is still high, and its body has a terrible cut in the middle of the body. At the Prime Minister's office, the discussion continued to take place in a tense atmosphere. People worried about the reaction of the public after the kaiju event. Many people still do not have housing, while the government budget was exhausted because all resources were poured into national defense. But in the end, it was impossible to stop kaiju. Idri suddenly appeared, hurriedly presented the photos she'd taken during her visit. Shocking photos among ministers. Defense Minister Haru was jealous, tried to adjust the satellite image on the tablet, but it has crumbled and accidentally opened an inappropriate video, make people awkward. At that time, the Minister of Tourism, Wiru, came up with a bold idea, turning Kaiju Book into a tourism attraction. He quickly performed some calculations and affirmed that the demand will be great, bringing a huge revenue to all agencies. The ministers became excited, and Odin emphasized that it was necessary to accelerate the status of security to start implementing the plan. In a neighboring country, the news begins to parrot the Japanese government because of the slow processing in book processing, kaiju, as well as the silence of the risk of toxins from the monster's body. While politicians were still arguing, Arata and Yukoka and their colleagues were directly acting. They hung a small boat approaching the book kaiju, which was backwards by the heat emanating from its body. Nearby, they discovered a strange bubble that no one has ever seen before. Each person made different hypotheses to explain this phenomenon, but Arata decided to be more pragmatic. He used a stick to poke at air bubbles. When the shell broke, the jumping substance shot around the boat, causing some people to feel nauseous by the stench. Air bubbles leave a hole on Kaiju's body. It was a strong, intense heat released. Meanwhile, Sori Minister's car running through a crowd of people with tin is declaring that Kaiju's death is a sign for the end of the world. Ignoring them, Sori emphasized that the security statement must come from the Ministry of Environment and cannot be given by any other agency. Yukino explained that other agencies were conducting analysis, but her boss said that these results were still being kept at the base of the task force. Sori suggests Yukino to take advantage of personal relationships with Arata to get those data. At the same time, Hodo is talking to his secretaries, who also want to receive the merit. They argue that the kaiju close handling will bring new hope to the people, and who solving this problem will receive gratitude from the public. At the laboratory, Yukino bribed a friend named Seiyoko to get the initial analysis results. Seiyoko reminded that this information is secret, but still revealed that no toxic substance has been detected from kaiju and the level of radiation. Meanwhile, at the office of the ministers, the argument broke out again. Many rumors surround kaiju, and people are concerned that its body will begin to decompose under the heat. Again, Sori interrupted the satisfaction with important news, presenting the report that Yukino stolen. The report confirmed that kaiju was completely not dangerous. However, shortly thereafter, we discover that Seiyoko is having a secret relationship with Amane. At the request of Amane, she provided a fake report to Yukino. The actual result is different, showing the presence of an unprecedented strange mycelium. Amane quickly transferred this information to Prime Minister Odin just 5 minutes before the press conference. In a climax sarcasm, Odin stated that he wanted to protect the public from unnecessary worries and affirmed that people have the right to not know the truth. At the press conference, Odin announced that kaiju was completely safe, then gave his words to Sori, who was broadcast live from a high location. Sori broadcast live from above, Chan people that everything is fine. Even the fish in the river are still healthy. However, she was so excited that she slipped and fell into the wound on Kaiju's body, causing the whole Japanese to witness the funny scene when she was hanging backwards. However, Mane promoted the effects beyond expectations, attracting the attention of the public. At the same time, a neighboring country began to ask kaiju ownership, declaring that the monster originally stemming from their territory. Take advantage of this attention, General Secretary Takanaka proposed to name kaiju as the first step to turn it into a tourist destination. Odin loves this idea, and Takanaka requires support from the series to propose a name in English. That night, a group of workers drilled into the kaiju's body caused a small explosion. Sakisa began to worry because this was the second incident related to the smell of dance. Meanwhile, the government officially announced the name for kaiju. However, the public is angry, a strong opposition because this name is more meaningful to support the monster rather than the victory anniversary. The government tries to explain that the whole aims to express hope after kaiju is defeated, but no one accepts. Disappointed by negative reactions, the government is a little angry with the task force, which means the commanding the campaign to handle their kaiju. Arata was introduced to the Code, the head of the newly established unit, in charge of eliminating kaiju. Self-proclaimed Code is a giant biological processing expert, although no one has ever encountered a similar situation. The first plan of the Code is kaiju's body frozen. Arata protested, saying that this would fail because the ice would dissolve the next morning, making the smell even more terrible. The Code rejected this idea, called it pessimistic. The debate escalated into a scuffle, but Arata could not resist the armed group under Code. Meanwhile, a giant bubble is forming on Kaiju's body, make people panic. No one knows what it is or how to eliminate it. One person suggested for the US to support, but Odin refused, saying that the US would ask for profits when the Kaiju tourism industry developed. The next day, the Kaiju frozen plan began and quickly became a disaster. The temperature inside the body increases, melt the entire ice. The bubble on Kaiju's body is 3 times larger than before and at risk of exploding. One of the soldiers at the base contacted with the minister's office to ask for permission to puncture the bubble. But Waterloo feared that this would lose the value of travel relics. While Amane asked for another 10 minutes to consider, the bubble continued to bulge and eventually exploded, spitting out black smoke, almost working as everyone at the worshipping base. The incident quickly spread to the public, causing the ministers to be surrounded by journalists who were asking for answers. The odor has increased to the point that the government is forced to expand the isolation area an additional 5 kilometers. The neighboring nation, which had previously requested Skyju ownership, now withdraws the request and starts to give threats if the odor spreads to their territory. During the emergency meeting, Amane blamed the task force, but Yukino protected them, saying that they no longer commanded the campaign. Amane lost his temper, publicly criticized his wife in the middle of the meeting. Prime Minister Odin interrupted, asking them to let the family solve at home. At the base, Arata was surprised to see Amane appear and was informed that he would lead activities now. This meeting reminded of sad memories. The last time they met was 3 years ago, when Amane was still in the task force and was chasing a strange light. Yukino at that time broke the rules, causing a serious accident that caused Amane to stuck his leg. At the same time, Arata disappeared mysteriously, and no one knew where he was for 2 years later. Back now, Sakisara informed Amane that a second bubble has begun to form, and the next explosion may affect the area of twice as much. At that moment, a strange guest appeared at the base, claiming to be Yami Kumo. He said that he had a solution to this problem and presented a process of exhausting, using technology to create artificial vortex to bring poisonous gas to the floor, where they will disperse without further harm to the area. Yami Kumo's solution, although creative, has a serious score. The first table must be extremely accurate. A deviation of only a few millimeters can reverse the process, causing the spread of the rotation instead of being released to the flask. When Amane consulted Secretary General Takanaka, he proved not very excited, especially when knowing that Yami Kumo is just a factory manager without a university degree. Meanwhile, Suri increasingly impatient with slow processing. When she heard she called Sakiju a pile of rotten stools, Yukino suddenly came up with the idea, drowning Sakiju into the river. She believes that the water can reduce odors if they succeed. That night, Yukino held a secret meeting with Arata. She explained her idea and asked the task force to support the destruction of the dam to raise the water, engulf Sakiju. Arata said that only one person could do this in a short time, Yukino's brother, nicknamed Bruce. Yukino agreed to talk to his brother. Before leaving, she asked, does Arata ever explain his 2 years of mysterious disappearance? Although a little uncomfortable, Arata promised to tell the truth after everything ended. Arata reached out to confirm the agreement, but Yukino, instead of a kiss, and said she still loved him. Meanwhile, Yukino's husband, Amane, also has a secret meeting, but not with Mistress, but with a doctor, Inugami. He promised to analyze images from the day Kaiju died. Amane keeps her own hypothesis about this event and has not shared with anyone. A few days later, Arata and Yukino met Bruce. Bruce, famous for his talent to build and use explosives, immediately showed hostility. Welcoming Arata with a heavenly punch, Bruce bluntly refused to help the government, even chasing the two with an unfinished explosive stick. After they left, Bruce calmly lit cigarettes from outside and extinguished it with fingers, showing amazingly. The cause of the hostile of Bruce with Arata was also revealed. Bruce hated Arata because he disappeared right before the wedding Yukino. During that time, Bruce's mother passed away without being able to fulfill her biggest dream, seeing her daughter married. While Bruce is eating at a small restaurant, the TV newsletter announced that the bubble on Kaiju's body is getting worse, and the isolated area will be expanded for 5 kilometers. A female service, extremely desperate when she realized that her home would be in the affected area, complaining that she had no place to go. Facing this situation, Bruce began to think again, and finally changed the decision. He appeared at the dam with a colorful assistant group, a bizarre style. Bruce was surprised to see Amane returning to the task force, but Amane quickly adjusted him that his rank was now much higher. Because water will flow with very strong force, all the population around the dam area is evacuated at 8, not dark. The last patrol was carefully checked to make sure no one was left behind, only a broken in the bush. However, this damage is actually an influencer disguised, as well as defending to record videos about kaiju. Saki Sara confirmed the explosion will take place at 4 a.m., and everyone in the position to observe the flood. When Bruce pressed the activation button, the scene became disappointed again. The explosion only produces a few small holes, causing the water to flow slowly, not enough pressure to submerge kaiju. The reason is identified as Amane confused and provided the design of a child dam, leading to errors in calculation. Fortunately, Bruce brought a backup bomb and quickly rushed away to activate it in time. Arata was worried when he saw him on the boat, but Bruce was safe that he always escaped from danger. At the Special Forces and in the government office, people are nervous to monitor via the screen. A drone flew over the area and called Bruce to the radio, but didn't receive a response. After that, the water finally added and kaiju started to slip, but didn't sink. Instead, a large watermark appeared on the body of the monster, released a horrible toxic smoke, and caused the bubble on his body to collapse a little. In another location, Influencer waded up from the river, who was full of dance, but still tried to make a disaster review video. In the corridor, Amane chuckled. It turns out that all his actions in the government are aimed at sabotaging plans and more time to prove his hypothesis. A few days later, Yukino and Arata visit Bruce in the hospital for the last failure. Meanwhile, the ministers want to take this opportunity to eliminate Amane from the commander. However, Amane persuaded Oden to give him another chance by explaining the plan to use the artificial whirlwind of Zamikumo. Meanwhile, Arata is bringing Yukino and Suri to see a worrying issue related to the iris. So far, the risk of explosions comes from a terrible odor, but now a new side effect has appeared. Wearing protective clothes, they entered an isolated room and saw Influencer was previously covered with mold on the body. Suri immediately reported this finding to Oden, but he did not want to publish the information out. While they were chatting, Yukino noticed a small mushroom growing from the head of the minister and quickly jerked it before someone noticed. Arriving home, Yukino saw her husband wearing a Special Forces uniform. Looking sad, Amane started telling the legend of the chosen person, an invincible hero. Yukino was surprised to hear him say that this legend could be related to Arata's mysterious disappearance. She tried to ask more about this strange theory, but Amane interrupted, saying he had said too much. At Inugani's laboratory, Amane asked about image analysis results. The doctor revealed that in some photos there was a shadow in the center of the light that killed kaiju. When Amane asked if this was really important, Inugami answered that the shadow had a recognizable shape. When entering the laboratory, the metal detector suddenly cried, revealing that Amane was using a mechanical leg. This made Yukino and Arata even more doubt about him. Later, Yukino and Arata met at her old house. Arata warned that Amane would use the wrong tornado technique, ignoring the accurate instructions from Yamikumo. Predict another disaster, both decided to do everything to stop him. A few hours later, Yukino scored an influencer's photo on the internet and sent his resignation at the same time. She then went to the base and discovered that Amane intended to use the missile to break the bubble on Kaiju's body. She begged her husband to think again, but he ignored her. The situation in Odosen's office is completely chaotic. The ministers panicked and Suri even attacked Takanaka. At the base of the Special Force, the attack was postponed when someone discovered Arata was standing on Kaiju's body. He is following Bruce's instructions to implement the process alone. Yukino panicked when he saw the person he loved was in the missile's flight, robbing a police motorbike. She told Yuko that they needed to stop this tragedy. When Arata penetrated the surface, the tornado began to form around the bubbles, proving the theory of Yamikumo. After that, he began to climb the monster to create holes from above. But the inner pressure has not decreased, and the air bubbles can explode at any time. Taking this reason, Amane immediately ordered the missile to the top of the air bubbles. Arata saw two mushrooms growing from his fist and tearing them out. He also saw that the missile was coming, but a third missile hit them both, causing the explosion to fly away from him. We realize that it is Yuko's job, who applied his drone experience. When the inner pressure continues to increase, Amane allowed an additional missile and said he would eventually discover the true identity of Arata. At the same time, Arata completed the final hole and the steam began to escape. The tornado began to combine with a larger whirlwind, like in the simulation. But the missile came before the result was confirmed, hit them with air bubbles and caused Arata to fall from above. Yukino was running towards Kaiju when the explosion occurred and the leaders of dance began to fall into the river. She started crying in despair, but then she saw Arata just a few meters away and he stood up. Not allowing her to approach, he raised his hand and said, "Death Machina." A strong light flared around him and his shadow began to enlarge until it had a huge shape. See the scene through the camera, Amane moved to confirm her theory. Arata is the chosen person. He once again saved the country. Kaiju's body lifted up to the floor and the movie ends here.